Okay, hi guys. In this video, I'm going to help you out a little bit with problem 4, which is another AP review. We haven't actually had the chapter yet on perfect competition, but I still think you shouldn't have any problem doing this one with what we've learned so far. But just in the case, I'm going to help you out a little bit. So what are we doing here? Let's look at it. Okay, so we are assuming that we have a market for home security systems in a perfectly competitive market, and they're currently in equilibrium. So that's going to look something like what I drew right here. So we have your supply and demand, and our price and the quantity is at perfect equilibrium. So we can put that point right there. Okay. All right, now, using a correctly labeled graph of supply and demand, show each of the following. The equilibrium, price, and the quantity, which I don't think you would have any problem at all doing, even if I didn't show you. And you want to make sure you label it. I didn't label it, but you guys can do that. And then you want to show the area representing the consumer surplus labeled as CS, and the area representing a producer surplus labeled as PS. And you should remember from what we've learned that the area for a producer's surplus is the area below the demand curve and above the price line. And then the producer surplus is the area above the supply, or actually the marginal cost curve. Always keep in mind that the marginal cost curve and the supply curve in a perfectly competitive market is the same thing. So this area right here below the price and above the a marginal cost or supply curve is your producer surplus, because this is where they're selling above cost. So this is the actual cost to produce each unit, each additional unit, and you can see in the theory, as you produce more, the cost of each additional unit goes up until you get to a point where it's equal to the price, where marginal cost equals price, and that's where you stop. So, okay. So that's our consumer and producer surplus. What next? Okay, so now we're going to suppose that the government imposes an effective binding price ceiling. Redraw your graph in part A and label the ceiling as P2 and completely shade the area representing the sum of the consumer surplus and the producer surplus after the imposition of the price ceiling. Okay, now when we go back to our graph and think about that, well, if it's going to be effective, then the price ceiling has to be below the equilibrium price. So we'll put it right there. Okay, so this is, let me get that out of the way. So this is how you would draw an effective price ceiling. In other words, the price can't go above this point right here. If it was up here, then it would not be effective, because it's already over the price, the market equilibrium price, so it's not going to go up here anyway. So a price ceiling is, in order for it to be binding or effective, needs to be below the equilibrium price. So we'll put it right there. Now what that's going to mean is that the quantity supplied is going to drop down to right here. So that now we've got a situation where this area right in here is deadweight loss. So now our producer and consumer surplus has shrunk, I'm not sure which word, gotten smaller. This area right here now, okay, the combined, okay. Now the producer surplus is going to be once again the area that is above the marginal cost curve and below the new price line, so right here. So that means that the producer surplus really shrank, got smaller, right? So what do we need to do next? So now it's asking us to, whoops, not that. There we go. It's asking us to suppose the demand for home security systems decreases. So if the demand, not the quantity demanded, but the demand, which means that the demand curve is going to shift. And if the demand decreases, it's going to shift to the left. And the price ceiling remains binding. Indicate what will happen to each of the following. Now, the key right here is that the price ceiling remains binding. So what that means is that we look at how we're going to shift our demand in order for it to remain binding, in order for the price ceiling to remain binding, demand can't shift past this point. Because we know we're going to shift to the left because demand is decreasing. But if we shift past this point, then the price ceiling is now above what the market price would be here, so it's no longer binding. So we know, oops, let me put that back. So we know that we're going to shift the demand to the left, but not farther than here. In order for this, right? In order for this price ceiling to remain binding. So if that happens, say we shift somewhere in here, say we shift from here to here, well, then you can see that a producer surplus doesn't change at all, and you can easily see what happens to consumer surplus. So once again, when you draw these graphs out, it's a lot easier to see the answers. So let me make sure I said that correctly. A producer, whoops, I don't want to grab him, I want to grab this guy. The producer, and put him back. The producer surplus that we had when we put in this price ceiling doesn't change when the demand curve shifts to the left, as long as the price ceiling remains binding. That means it can't shift past this point right here, okay? And then you can easily see what's going to happen to the consumer surplus. All right, I've helped you out a lot with that one. But you know, I want to give you guys a really good idea of whoops, wrong one. Here we go. I want to give you guys a really good idea of, you know, what these free response questions on your AP exam are going to be like, and you know, the way they're going to, you know, ask these questions. You're really going to have to be smart about, you know, reading into what they're telling you, because they're giving you the information you need to, you know, answer the question. Sometimes it's just not obvious. Okay, this is going to be due on December 12th, even though it says up here December the 8th. I changed it to December the 12th. It says on your assignment right here, and the quiz is going to be due December, well, what did I say? December 15th, I believe. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it's going to be due. Right, the quiz is going to be due. It's going to be extended until December 15th, and then we're going to get a break. All right, guys. See you later.